to draw on Jim Gillis. He is the Area B Director for Regional District and a member of the task force, and he'll do some introductions, and we'll call on the panelists to be ready to start the first presentation. We're a few minutes late, but we'll keep our commitment to each of the presenters to give you a fulsome story. Thank you.
Thank you, Runaway. Welcome, everybody. I've been given a very script here, and I've been told to follow it or else. So that's what I intend on doing. We've got an exciting panel of people here to provide you with some excellent information. So I know there's going to be lots of questions at the end of the presentation. And I'm just going to briefly say we've got Sarah Sullivan, Jenny Balke, and Amanda Ridgeway are right here, all set and fired up and ready to go. And we're going to have Sarah Sullivan go first. But first I'm going to read what it's all about. Capacity building. It's a community-based approach which is more than bricks and mortar, for it includes prevention, services, community engagement and partnerships, as well as increased options for affordable long-term housing. It works strategically and collaboratively to build solutions that are based on long-term impacts and sustainability. The tangible results of capacity building are multifaceted. That is more than the number of people housed. A successful housing strategy must also include increased capacity in the following areas: the availability and quality of affordable, social and supportive housing, accessibility and availability of services, and stakeholder collaboration. Without a comprehensive approach to housing solutions, the length of a specific project or funding term may limit capacity and long-term sustainability. Communities across Canada are realizing that building capacity and implementing long-term strategies are the most effective use of the limited resources currently available. In 2012, the Comox Valley Housing Task Force implemented a Building Capacity to Address Homelessness grant program. As part of that program, you're about to hear about the 3 projects. They will share their experiences, their learnings, and help build the capacity of this community to address homelessness. Now, the first person we have on tap, and I must say they've got to keep their presentations to 10 minutes or else, because we want to have lots of questions. And I'm going to go around at the end with a roving mic so that you have an opportunity to get your questions to our presenters. First person is Sarah Sullivan. She's the current chair of AHERO, the Ad Hoc Emergency Resources Organization, which was founded in 1994. As a collaborative group represented by more than 30 community agencies, church groups, and individuals concerned with the less fortunate members of our society. AHERO's aim is to identify the need for emergency services, encouraging their development, and helping to coordinate their delivery. Sarah is a registered social worker and the manager of the Courtenay and Campbell River offices of AIDS Vancouver Island, where she provided a positive wellness counseling and harm reduction services. In 2012, a building capacity grant supported the annual community resource fair. It was conducted again just last week, and Sarah will share the story and the value of this important annual event. Please welcome Sarah Sullivan.
I'm happy to give this report on behalf of Rhonda Billy, who was the lead organizer for last year's resource fair, and she was the former housing outreach worker at the Ridgeway Friendship Center, and she's now moved on to the social development position at the Comox Band. So I got the stats from them, and I'm going to just brief you on what the resource fair is and what occurred last year. So the resource fair occurred on October 11th in 2013. So this is about last year's resource fair because that's what we got the grant for. So the resource fair has happened now 7 years, and as most things occur with a hero, it comes out of discussion at the group level, and we come up with an idea of what could be a way to get information out to our service users, provide more services. And so 7 years ago, there was the idea of having a resource fair. So we gather in the Lewis Center gym. And so last year's fair, we had 43 participating agencies. So that's an outstanding amount for this small of a community. And they meet in a gym about this size and have displays, and there's giveaways. We had a free room last year, so the squash court was all set up beautifully organized with free clothing and housewares. Everyone who came got a gift card, so a shopping cart, and Salvation Army did a barbecue lunch, and we had 112 individuals attend that event. So it's a really fortunate event that we have in this community, and the clients really look forward to it. They ask about it every year. And it gives a really low-key way for people to find out in one space about all the different resources that are available. And they can speak one-to-one. They don't have to make an appointment. It's very casual, and they can connect with multiple different agencies in one spot. And it's also a festive type of atmosphere. People look forward to it. So it's obviously, we've seen since we've done it for 7 years now that it's a success, it works, and we're really thankful to have received this grant, because A Hero is completely frontline grassroots organization. We don't have any funding, so to put this resource fair on, we have to be very creative of how we're going to pay for the coffee and the gift cards and things like that. So it was really fortunate that we've got this grant, and we thank you very much. And if you haven't attended the resource fair, I really encourage you to come out next year. We do advertising in the community, and just come on through and find out about the services that are available. Thank you. Amanda said she liked my time.
Apparently they're going to share. Thanks very much, Sarah. Now, next on the list is Jenny Balke. She was hired to work on a rural affordable housing project spearheaded by the Denman Community Land Trust Association. Also with her today is Harleen Holm of the Denman Island Trust, but she's in the audience, correct? Right? Thank you. Go ahead to mention your name. The Trust's mandate is to provide secure, affordable housing for low-income earners who are in need of long-term housing. DCLTA believes that affordable housing is a necessary component of a vibrant, diverse, and sustainable community. And who doesn't agree with that comment? Their rural affordable housing project was designed to support the creation of long-term affordable housing, enhance farm viability and local food security, and explore housing agreement possibilities with the Agricultural Land Commission. The project final report and DCLTA's follow-up recommendations have been forwarded to over 25 agencies and organizations. So with no further ado, Jenny Balke.
Thank you very much. I'd like to encourage everyone, as this project you heard was funded by, or put on by the Denman Conservancy Land Trust, and thank our funders very much for. Next, please. No. All right, funded by the Comox Valley Housing Task Force. Thank you very much. But I'd like to encourage people to go to the DCLTA booth, because they have a lot of projects, of which this is only one. And this whole project was talking about working together. We've heard a few times already. And I think it's really important that we pick out the issues that we're going to work on, that we ID the stumbling blocks, and then try and find solutions to those. And so this is one aspect of problems. And this We have a slideshow that's about half an hour long, which we have 10 minutes, 12 minutes to present. And so I'm going to really go through it quickly, even without a clicker. He's going to get his use of his thumb. And most of this information is in our final report, which I encourage people to read. And if anybody wants it, I'm sure Harleen will be happy to email it to you. It's on your website too, great. And you might wonder why a biologist, which is what I am, I have my own consulting company for biology, would be involved in this project. But I've consulted in biology issues, environmental issues for 25 years. Before that, for 8 years, I was a large animal veterinarian. And I actually combine both that long-term interest in farming as well as ongoing support for the environment in the work I do. For the last 2 years prior to this project, I went around the province teaching sheep and goat health. So it's sort of a mix. And certainly we're really concerned about keeping agriculture in this province, particularly in this area, as we'll see a little bit as we go through this. And from the biologist point of view, I just have to really honor, I taught at Laketail for a little while, and I would really like to say that if we reach out to our young people more, that's where many of the issues begin, and I'm really encouraged and I'm just wonderfully enthused to your presentation, Rachel. Anyway, and as a biologist, I did a project in the Comox Valley looking at river otter pesticides that they accumulate. I did the Comox Valley, Harbour, Victoria, and Vancouver, and going around the shoreline of all those three places, everywhere that a river otter could get into for a decent-sized house had a human living in it, even in the Comox Valley. So it's really shocking what we have to deal with. Anyway, moving on. Next, please. So our goal of this project was to look at housing more people in the ALR that want to farm. Next, please. I'm just going to, as I say, briefly go through these. People know about the Agricultural Land Reserve. If you don't, you can read more about it. Next, please. Why was the DCLTA interested in the Agricultural Land Reserve? And it would apply also to the Comox Valley. You have a lot of land, all that brown on Denman's map. 46% of the island is in the ALR. So if we're going to house people on Denman and we want them farming, we're going to be looking at that ALR land. Next, please. We have a view of agriculture, which interestingly reports of Vancouver Island support that the view of agriculture is indeed these kind of things, feeding ourselves, sustainability, on and on. Next, please. So we wanted to look at farming and housing with the same kind of attitude that the Agricultural Land Commission has, which you'll hear about in a second. All these great things. We're avoiding the negative things. Next, please. The Agricultural Land Commission is the body that administers our ALR. Next, please. It's an independent group. Chair is Richard Bullock. And again, really good group to work with. And they're interested in hearing our ideas. So let's get on board with them. They have a mandate. They're responsible for the ALR. They have a mandate to encourage agriculture. Next, please. They don't want agricultural land just simply going to housing. They're housing farmers. They want agriculture supported. They don't want it divided. Why should we care about, why do they care about the ALR in our area? Because Vancouver Island doesn't have very much ALR, and we have a lot of it. Next. Why is it an issue? If you want to farm today, you got to buy a farm. It costs a lot of money. The farmers that are there now are aging. We're going to go through this, and they need help, but they're still going to live on those farms. And there's a controlled housing. Next, please. So average cost on Denman in 2006 was roughly $500,000. Next, please. There's a whole reality check. There aren't any farms on Denman that support themselves by their agriculture. They are all supported by someone else doing something else that's a partner to the farmer, working off the farm. And I think you'd find in the Vancouver Island report similar story. these, as I said, these farmers are aging. Look at, everybody on Denman in 2006 was over 35, most of them are over 55. But they're not gonna, they're farmers, they're not gonna go anywhere, they wanna live on that farm, and we're not that old. But we do need help. Next. If you get help, you gotta pay them. You gotta pay them, at least minimum wage and all that kind of stuff. It's really expensive. But farmers, I mean, I don't want to say that you can't make money, but it's the reality of it is that you're not going to make very much money. And so outpaying labor that comes and works on your farm is really difficult. It's a huge issue. So many things are looking at sharing equity projects, so in various different ways. And if you can share part of the farm somehow, then that's great. But where are you going to live if you're sharing? Next, please. And so you go back to the ALC. Well, if you can only have one residence on a parcel of land, that doesn't care about what it's zoned for. One parcel, one residence, unless it's for this amorphous thing for farm use. Or you can also have a secondary suite or a manufactured home for the owner's immediate family. Next, please. Probably going to have to hurry through these. That's the ALC. You have then the local government adds its own restrictions. You can't do better than the ALC, but you can restrict it more if you're a local government. Next, please. What the ALC really wants to see, and I think we would all support, is that we want to know that if you're going to put an extra house on that land, it's got to be needed for farming, and you've got to be sure that it's going to stay for farming use. And so this is what the project did. Next, please. We asked the community a bunch of questions. Next. How would they add it? Next, please. What criteria? Next, please. A whole lot of questions. Next, please. It's stuck. It's probably gotten a little slower, maybe.
It's because Tom's over 55.
Okay. Wait, hold on. Did it ever come back? And so we got the community involved in doing this process, and we get our techno guy. Okay, the point was, Denman has a whole lot of initiatives in our farming that we want to keep. We want to keep the existing farmers on the land. We want to keep the sustainable agriculture. We want to. There's a lot of people that are buying farmland, and it's so true in the Comox Valley. They can afford to buy a $500,000 property or more, but they have no skills in farming. They have no interest in farming. It's an ALR land, but they're not going to farm it. We'd like to see that farmed. But there's only one residence, so where's the farmer going to live? We also want to support new farming operations, and we want, okay, now we're going to, excuse me. Next, please.
You get a bonus now.
Yeah, next, please. Existing farms, but the aging farmers. Issues, stumbling blocks. I really encourage people to do that approach. Next, please. These part-time residents are, next, please. This is distance agriculture. Next, please. Community shared agriculture is another way, but has issues. They need more labor. And then a big one is these cooperative farming models. Can we get more people living on an ALR property? The stumbling blocks are many official community plans and land use bylaws only allow one family per house. We would want to have more than one family per house or multiple dwellings in some kind of controlled way. Next, please. And of course, more new farms. Next, please. So we want to solve these stumbling blocks, and so alternative housing options is one of the big incentives. Next, please. And so we had a bunch of recommendations. One was they want to limit impact on farmland. The ALC does, and we do too. And we want to know what farm need means, because it's not defined. And we want to provide that certainty that it's going to be used for farming. So how do we do that? Next, please. Well, we developed criteria, which we went ahead and did. Next, please. For limited impact. You could come up with a point system. Develop locally. I mean, every area is going to have its own issues. So regional districts, farm organizations can get together, and you can have a point system that next please, that not only gives people an assurance that if they get the 100 points in this various ways, because not every property is the same. How are we doing?
You're moving along very nicely.
Okay, get to the end quickly. But not only are they going to get this insurance that yes, indeed, they've reached the goal, but they're going to get educated. By going through this, they're going to learn what are the important issues in limited impact, what are the important issues in farm needs, so they'll try and tailor that to what's here, which is great. And as I say, this can be developed and so that people know what they have to do. Next, please. Okay, next, please. And provision of certainty. There are ways to put in that this is going to be for farm use. And these are some of the ways. I don't have time to go into them. Next, please. And also, okay, the second big one, we could have secondary suites in farms. Some areas, like Denman, doesn't allow secondary suites. Next, please. We could allow movable homes. That's a perfect way to provide provision of certainty, because if they're movable and they don't meet the criteria eventually, they're told to move off. But there are stumbling blocks. Denman, for example, if you have a movable house, you got to have a foundation for it, permanent foundation. Well, that takes away from the limited impact and the movability, so it doesn't make sense. So take away that. Also, the only criteria the ALC allows right now is these manufactured homes, but there's plenty of people making wonderful. Hornby Island makes a wonderful place that's movable that people live in. You can look on small homes on the net. They're not, quote, licensed trailers, but they're wonderful small movable homes. Next, please. And the whole issue of other models that we just briefly touched on. Next, please. So our final report has all of this stuff. Next, please. So this is it. These are the things that we considered clear criteria: secondary suites, movable homes, and alternative models. And of course, you want to meet all the important things like septic and siting provisions. Next, please. So the future of agriculture rests in the hands of us to design these things, and we can go ahead and the affordable housing options and the governing bodies can go ahead and butt heads and relegate agriculture to a declining thing as in the top, or we can look at new ideas and new opportunities and go forward. Thank you.
Well done. You know, I was liberal, wasn't I, at the time? And so I'm going to be equally liberal with our next speaker, Amanda Ridgeway. Representing a four-way partnership, Dawn to Dawn, AIDS Vancouver Island, Comox Valley Transition Society, and Wache Friendship Center. The Building Capacity Initiative is Ignite Consultancy's Amanda Ridgeway. Ms. Ridgeway experienced designing and delivering integrated systems of care, draws on a career including dual diagnosis clinician, managing youth alcohol and drug services, and commissioning and coordinating borough-wide health strategies in that beautiful city of London, England. In Fernie, from matching home from London to Fernie, there must have been skiing or something involved. Maybe something else, I don't know. Her role as director with the Fernie Family Housing Society included conceiving and laying the groundwork for the build of Finito Place, BC Housing's first public-private partnership. Ms. Ridgeway has now made the Comox Valley her home, and rightly so. So without any further ado, please welcome Amanda Ridgeway.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Amanda Ridgeway from Ignite Consulting. Thanks, Joe, for the excellent introduction. I'm going to try to take 11 minutes to share with you the journey, a 12-month journey of 4 partners who joined together to build the capacity of this community in responding to homelessness. I'm going to run through the project, its aim, and what we did, what we found, what it means for our community, what we plan to do about it both now and in the future. So these 4 agencies currently provide a range of services in the community, including street and service outreach, emergency shelter, support services and housing, among other services. They are all present within this room. Next slide. Over a year ago, the project began with these agencies acknowledging that there were service gaps, and they agreed that by collaborating and building capacity across the agencies, they could create a more efficient service delivery to the homeless and those at risk of homelessness in the community. They created a building community capacity project with this aim: to apply current best practices in the Comox Valley context and implement an effective and enduring collaborative response to homelessness at the service level. The focus was on creating a workable model of integrated service delivery across the agencies and the mechanisms, the tools, and the professional development required for its implementation. They believed that by forming a more cohesive, integrated, and shared approach to homelessness, that they could improve outcomes for their clients and community members, and ultimately a reduction in homelessness. Next slide. So how did this project begin? We began with a best practice review. We published a report, and I'm sure it's sitting on your bedside tables. We focused on these 6 communities. We interviewed leaders, we visited people. Some of those leaders are here within this room with us today. Next slide, please. The best practice review revealed early on fundamental principles or strategies that became important for us to keep in mind throughout the rest of the project. These consistent themes were strongly supported by research and would help ensure our success. The review quickly found support for the use of integrated service delivery models, confirming that the key aim of the project was valid. But it was more than that. It wasn't just service providers collaborating. What we found was successful communities are responding to homelessness through systems of care that stretch across many sectors, including mainstream services and many organisations. To achieve the best results, organisations across the community must think and act like a system, putting the client at the centre of the network of services that act together in a coordinated fashion. In leading communities, we found ending homelessness is the plan, not managing it, ending it. And that means that prevention and early intervention are also very important. We also found that housing first is the solution. It's the best solution we have right now. Again, a systems approach is important. Just last week, a book was released, Housing First in Canada, supporting communities to end homelessness. It states, the places that seem to be making the most progress in reducing homelessness through Housing First tend to have an integrated systems plan. In the same publication, and through leading communities, we found supports are absolutely key. We also found evidence-based practices, including those that were presented to the Comox Valley in previous work done by consultants in March 2011. These practices are consistently and proactively pursued within leading communities. And we found that local context is important. Yes, approaches and practices are evidence-based and they can be transferred, but they need to be transferred in a way that fits each community. It was from this place of understanding evidence-based practices and on what makes up a system and how it works that we wanted to move the project forward. Next slide, please. Next, we moved into scoping activities. So with a better sense of where we wanted to get to and how others were getting there, our next steps were to detail the Comox Valley context. to shine a light into the practices, processes we were using, and the structure of the system that exists here. We wanted to look with a critical eye and compare what we were doing with best practices. What did we find? We confirmed much of what this community already knows. The Comox Valley system is a variable and stretched system, and just like the leading communities before us, it operates in an under-resourced context with barriers and limitations, with some key missing components such as housing, but also community-wide case management. You can see from this list, it's a great reason we're here today. It was determined that many of these characteristics are likely a forced adaptation to structurally imposed conditions, a result of isolation, and a reaction to scarcity. Next slide. In our investigations, we discovered clear evidence of capacity challenges. As organisations attempt to manage these challenges, the impact on the system and its workforce and the clients was clearly observed. Importantly for today's discussion, the absence of a continuum of housing has widespread impact, and it contributes to communities' members' entry into homelessness, and it prohibits movement out of the homeless serving system. Through interviews and activities, many practitioners, service managers expressed a strong desire for innovation, for moving towards better practices. However, it was evident that a lack of capacity precludes implementing these changes. Next slide, please. As a capacity building project, it was also important for us to identify the strengths and assets of the community. Finding and mobilizing these strengths and assets has been very successful in leading communities. And this is something that this community can take advantage of in finding solutions. Again, as stated in Housing First in Canada conclusions page, being from a small community need not be a barrier to application. And in fact, smallness may be an asset in terms of establishing relationships and service coordination necessary for effective service delivery. The scoping activities that we conducted confirmed that these strengths are present within this community. The Comox Valley is fortunate to be a small community because of the relationships between staff, the relationships between staff and clients, the proximity and number of services, and the collaborations that already exist. You're hearing about some of those things today. Next slide. So, with the concentrated effort through the best practice review and scoping activities, we now had a vision, an integrated system of care for ending homelessness in the community. But the project team had now also identified the first big challenge. Reviewing the state of the system, it was clear that the initial challenge was to stabilise the system within current capacity, whilst looking to increase the necessary resources to make improvements and achieve the significant changes that would bring success. What they saw was an opportunity, and it was an opportunity for accelerated progress. We have the information, we know what we've got to work with. We now have a destination in mind, we have a detailed view of the lay of the land, and we have a sense of the strengths available to begin the journey. Now it's time for a map. Next slide, please. So what are we doing about it? It was at this time the project moved forward with the creation of a proposed model for the community. Having this model will transition to a more responsive, effective, and cost-efficient service system of care that could demonstrate results. We will be presenting this model with the project's final report. The model is based on Housing First with supports. It embeds best practices, it utilises the lessons of the leading communities, It's designed with local context and local input, and it's sustainable over time. Creating this ideal system will take time and loads of collaboration. The collective wanted to begin the work on the part that they could play in moving things forward now. The team turned their attention specifically to what would help initially stabilising the system and also gathering the information to move forward from an evidence-based perspective. Next slide. In the final stages of this project, the collective has commenced innovations that will provide tangible local changes and begin the transformation to a more efficient system. The collective are working with community partners and BC Housing to develop these best practice tools: a common consent form, a common intake form, and shared referral protocols. These tools will begin the process of establishing a centralised intake and assist with evidence-based prioritising of clients. In addition, training and other professional development will support the implementation of these tools. The aim is to pilot these initiatives and evaluate their impact. It is hoped that other providers will join in these innovations and that they can be expanded across the community. To further join up services and build capacity, workshops have been conducted, including a streamlining access and coordinating services workshop, which many of the people sitting on these chairs were at. Hi. And today we're also having a Housing First in Practice lunch period. So the collective are currently discussing what next. They are only part of this system, and this project will soon come to a close. So what is the future? The collaborative efforts of the collective team have achieved much over the course of a year, and there is still more to come. However, transitioning to a responsive and effective system of care that achieves an end to homelessness will require a community to make that happen. To make real transformation, these vital elements, the four listed here, must be prioritised now. And it will need an initial investment in order to achieve the desired results that this community wants over the long term. We do hope that today will be another leap forward in this community's joining together to end homelessness. So thank you very much.
The next job depends on you, the audience. Hopefully you've been filling out those yellow cards and following the instructions with regard to that. I'm supposed to say, please note, there are cue cards and pencils on your chair. So please keep in mind your top takeaway message from this panel and record it at the end of the panel. This is to me. Remind them to drop their cards in the box at the end of the panel, so don't forget that. That's an order. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to have the three presenters who've done a tremendous job. They're going to come up here and share the mic, just move in and out. And I'm going to go down and be, do you want to do that? I'll go down and be the roving mic person. So let's see who's the first question. No, I've got a mic.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to invite the folks who are in the next panel, if they do want to get together in the Soar Optimist room before the panel starts. I just wanted to alert you to that right now. Not everybody. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Hi, Doug Hillian, City of Courtenay. I wanted to ask a question of the Denman Island presenter. I'm sorry I forgot your name. Last night I was at a film screened by World Community on the movement of young people to get into farming, and it was followed up by some dialogue with young people who are in fact farming in the Comox Valley. And the point that was made really loud and clear is that there is a movement of young people who want to farm, but access to land, of course, is a huge issue. And one of the things that was raised was what role our Comox Valley Economic Development Society may have in supporting the movement of young people into access to land for farming, and whether there's any steps that we can take through creative financing, through credit unions and such. So it seems to me that we've got a combination here of plenty of land available to people who can't or don't want to farm it, and young people who want to farm but don't have access to land. Any thoughts about the role of economic development in our financial institutions in helping to make this happen?
That's great, and I totally agree. That's the story we've heard over and over again. And the neat thing is that there are these young people who really want to farm, and that's so encouraging. And that's why we looked at what were the stumbling blocks, how they could fit in, and we targeted housing as the big issue. Because where are they going to live? If you live near farms and you already have a house, then you could work on that farm. But you've got to buy the house on Denman. You've got to buy the property, and that's still really expensive. So, and so many people want to live on the farms and work there because that's really their only feasible option. So I think with any interest in that, any group that's interested in, is to work to lobby the specific issues that are going to enable housing. Working, what does the farming community want in the ALR? And does your local bylaw support secondary suites, for example? If it doesn't, that's the first step, because the ALC lets you have one on a farm for anybody. So if you've got a nice big, what we call these rural castles, somebody who's not farming but has a big house on a property that could be farmed, perhaps they would be willing to have a secondary suite in their large house that would house a young person who's going to farm the land. And so that could be a really good, feel-good thing for the landowner, could give that. So that's one opportunity. There are others, but these need to be lobbied and brought to fruition through either the local government or in terms of co-op farms and things like that. It'll take an initiative supported by money and ideas and work to go to the ALC and say, in this area, we'd like to try one co-op farm. The ALC will tell you, oh, co-op farms, they fail. Well, let's try one here. We know of successful ones that are working under the radar. But if we brought it out there and showed the regional district, anyway, lobbying, financing that lobbying. Thank you.
Question for Amanda about siloing and the idea that organizations work to promote themselves primarily. And what are the really practical solutions to encouraging people to move out of their silos and to cooperate more effectively? We have some, you've noted some things, intake forms and all that collective things, but how do you get people not to be so focused on themselves, and how do you get them to be more focused and listen to what other people are saying, and not just be always focused within themselves and open up to other groups? What practical organizational techniques can you suggest to do that?
I think firstly, there is a lot of communication that is occurring, and I think that the last 12 months, and I'm sure the partners can confirm this, the last 12 months with this project has resulted in a number of different opportunities, and I think that we'll see when we release the final report that a big impact has been an increased collaboration and increased communication, and I think that organisations have also, because of the competitive environment that's basically forced upon them, that they're recognising that now, and that they see that they can achieve more by collaborating together. In terms of mechanisms or strategies or tools, I think it needs to be looked at every level of the community. For instance, strategically, we don't yet have an overarching plan that is working and that is monitored and that is being held, the people in it are being held accountable for it. Strategic plans around homelessness and ending homelessness have been demonstrated to be effective. And in terms of funding allocations, I know with Victoria, for instance, that's part of how they've come to be where they are today. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that today. Organisationally, I think that the organisations do work hard to try to get together, but even commencing this project and trying to conduct this project with them was a challenge because they're really overworked. And there's no one really having a very strong mandated purpose of bringing the communities to the organisations together until this project has certainly helped. But I think there's no one really mandated to ensure that the communities are working, the organisations work together.
And I think having a coordinating entity, for instance, having designated roles that are focused on how vulnerable people in our community can ensure they get the services they need through it like a system. I think that's going to be something we really need to push for. And I know that practitioners on a day-to-day basis, that they need to be given the authority to say, this is really important, that we get together and we talk about this client. It's very important. And I think that this community at every level needs to start looking at it from that approach. And I know the organisations are very happy to step up to do that, but they need the resources to help make that happen.
Thank you very much indeed. We're trying to get onto our schedule, and our next committee, I believe, is till 11:30. So can we have a great big round of applause for our two panelists? Thank you very much.